Years ago, I thought family meant one thing. No matter what happened, there would always be a place for you. I believed that if you worked hard enough, gave enough, sacrificed enough, eventually people would see your value. I was wrong. The message came through on an ordinary evening. The family group chat lit up. Maybe after everything, it's best if Sloan takes a step back. Then another message. We all agree. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. A few reactions followed. A heart, a thumbs up, a couple of short comments. That was all. Strange how a few words can suddenly make years feel invisible. I stared at my phone without moving. I wasn't shocked. Not really. Part of me had seen it coming for a long time. Because the truth is, I'd spent years being the person in the background. The organizer, the problem solver, the one people called when something needed fixing. I kept schedules running, smoothed over disagreements, managed details no one wanted to think about. I was always there, quietly, consistently. But being needed and being valued aren't always the same thing. Sometimes people get so used to your presence that they stop noticing it altogether. I looked at the screen one more time, then I typed a single word. Understood. I hit send, closed the chat, turned off my notifications, and for the first time in years, everything went quiet. My name is Sloan, and if you think this story is about losing everything, stay with me. Because sometimes losing your place in one story is exactly how you begin writing another. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. No television, no music, just silence. And silence can be uncomfortable. Because when the noise disappears, you hear things you've spent years avoiding. Questions, memories, truths. I sat there asking myself something I had never asked before. Who am I when I'm not carrying everyone else? For years, my worth had become tied to usefulness. If I helped enough, I mattered. If I sacrificed enough, I belonged. If I kept everyone happy, eventually someone would say, "We're grateful for you." But sitting there in that quiet room, I realized I had been waiting for permission. Permission to rest, permission to dream, permission to choose myself. And maybe the hardest realization of all, nobody was ever going to hand me that permission. I had to give it to myself. The next few weeks felt strange. No emergency phone calls, no requests, no pressure to solve someone else's problem. At first, I didn't know what to do with all the empty space. Then something unexpected happened. I started breathing differently. I started sleeping better. I started noticing things. Sunlight coming through my windows in the morning. Coffee tasting better when I wasn't rushing. Books on my shelf I had bought years ago but never opened. Small things, beautiful things. Things I'd been too busy to see. My phone still rang occasionally. Messages would come through. "Hey, Sloan, can you help with this? Do you know where this file is? Can you take care of that?" For years I would have said yes immediately, but now I paused, and sometimes I said, "I can't." Not angrily, not dramatically, just honestly. And I learned something important. Boundaries don't push people away. They show people where you begin. Months passed. Slowly, I started rediscovering parts of myself I had forgotten existed. I started writing again, started reading again, started thinking about dreams I had buried because life got busy. Ideas I once called unrealistic suddenly didn't seem impossible anymore. One idea stayed with me. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Over the years, I had met so many people who knew exactly what invisibility felt like. Women who gave everything to others, people overlooked by families, people who had spent years supporting everyone else's future while quietly abandoning their own. Brilliant people, strong people, people full of talent and possibility. But somewhere along the way, they had started believing they mattered less. I kept thinking, what if someone reminded them that they don't? What if someone simply reminded them they're still here? So I started something small, very small. A few conversations, coffee meetings, phone calls, Nothing official, just people sharing stories. Stories about starting over, stories about feeling unseen, stories about choosing themselves. I called it Forge because that's what it felt like. Not breaking, becoming. Weeks passed, then months, and somehow, little by little, something beautiful started growing. People connected, ideas became plans, plans became opportunities, opportunities became real change. I watched people launch businesses, return to school, pay off debt, start over with courage they didn't know they had. And every time someone smiled and said, "I finally feel seen," something inside me healed too, because I realized I wasn't building something for other people. I was rebuilding myself. Eventually, people began noticing. Messages started arriving, interview requests, podcasts, articles. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Did your family situation inspire this? They expected anger, they expected resentment, but I always gave the same answer. No, because anger wasn't what built this. Healing did. One afternoon, someone sent me an old photograph, a family event from years earlier. Everyone stood together smiling, and there I was in the corner, holding bags, standing slightly outside the frame, smiling politely. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it made me sad, because I barely recognized her. That version of me spent so much time trying to belong that she forgot she already did. She thought acceptance had to be earned. She thought love meant disappearing for everyone else. She had no idea what was coming. A year later, Forge held its first annual gathering. Nothing fancy, no expensive decorations, no grand ballroom. Just a room filled with people who had rebuilt themselves. Entrepreneurs, single parents, dreamers, people who had once doubted their own value. I walked onto the stage holding a few handwritten notes. Then I looked out at the crowd. Hundreds of faces looking back, waiting, listening. I smiled. I used to think success meant being invited into the room, I said. Everything became quiet. I thought if I worked hard enough, eventually someone would save me a seat. I paused. Then I looked around the room. But life taught me something better. I laughed softly. They didn't realize I could build my own table. People smiled. Some laughed. Some cried. And for a moment, I just stood there. Not because I felt successful, because I felt free. Later that night, I walked home alone. No cameras, no spotlight, no noise. Just peace. At my door sat an envelope. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting. Dad. Inside were only a few lines. We thought we understood what mattered. Maybe we were wrong. I hope you're happy. I read it twice, folded it carefully, and placed it inside a book. Not because everything was fixed, because not every story ends with perfect closure. Sometimes closure looks different. Sometimes it simply means understanding. Today, people ask if I regret stepping away. I don't, because I didn't lose myself when I walked away. I found myself. I learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish. I learned that silence can become strength. I learned that healing can build things pain never could. And most importantly, I learned that sometimes the person standing quietly in the corner isn't waiting for permission. They're preparing to build something entirely their own. They told me to step away, so I did. And I never imagined something so beautiful would be waiting on the other side.